talk editing and post-production, I feel like this is the place where I'm going to get the most questions. I'm going to very quickly set up my objective for this particular video. I am not here to teach you how to use your specific editing software. There are 1,000 tutorials on YouTube. Just type in the name of your editing software and the problem that you currently have, and I promise you there will be a tutorial for it. What I am going to teach you is how to edit for dance. Because that is my niche, that is what I'm here for, and that's what we're going to do together. We're going to talk about the editing techniques and tips and tricks I have to make sure that when you edit for dancing, it looks really great. When I'm looking for inspiration as a filmmaker on how to film and edit dance sequences, I often look to action fight sequences. Like dance videos, action sequences often have a very fast movement, lots of edits, and it needs to be understandable and readable. So when you're watching a fight sequence and you don't understand what on earth is going on, there is something gone wrong with the editing or the filming. And that is an opportunity to learn what not to do. The places I look for inspiration for great examples of things you should be doing is Mad Max Fury Road and any Jackie Chan movie ever. So these films do a couple specific things that I think are really great for when you're doing dance content. First things first, in Mad Max Fury Road, you have centered focus. Whenever they cut between action sequences, you'll notice that whatever is moving or whatever the thing that you should be looking at is always in the center of the frame. This is so that your eye does not have to move around the screen to understand where you should be looking and process that information. The way your eye moves takes brain processing power. The more your eye moves, the more work your brain has to do and the less information your brain can absorb. So whenever we're doing lots of movement, you want to make sure that it's focused in the center of the frame. So whenever you're cutting between stuff, you want to make sure that the action of your dancing is focused in the center of the screen. It's super jarring when you cut between things where your eye has to move dramatically and the movement has happened really quickly, because then you don't have time to process what's actually happened. So I recommend think Mad Max Fury Road, focus all of your dancing in the center of the frame. Unless you're going for something very, very specific, this is the best way to make sure that your video is going to be legible and readable to your audience. Step 2, think Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan has a specific editing technique that he uses in his films where he shows you the action twice. If Jackie Chan is going to punch somebody, he'll show you the punch from a long shot, and then when he zooms in, not from the impact point, but from a little bit before the impact point, before you see the punch. You actually see the punch twice, because you'll see the long shot to here, and the close-up will be to here. This allows the audience to have that little extra moment to breathe, to understand what they're seeing, and it makes the action flow a lot smoother. For example, when I'm shooting a dance shot, I'll show you the beginning preparation of the movement, and then when I cut for a close-up, I'll show you a little bit of that preparation as well as the final movement. It's a super nice way to make sure that your audience can fully understand what they're seeing as they're seeing it. Quick fire top tips. Don't use cross dissolves, fade outs, wipes, or star wipes, or anything like this unless you are very intentionally trying to be very cheesy, because it comes across as super cheesy. Hard cuts are totally fine. Just literally cut it, put the new thing there. You don't need a transition. Honestly, it's fine. Sound design is more important than you think. A really bad visual can be saved with great sound. Trust me when I tell you this, it's always better to have better sound quality than better video quality. As viewers, we will forgive bad video quality much quicker than we are going to forgive bad sound quality. So make sure that your sound quality is as great as you can physically make it. This is also a luxury thing, like if you can afford a microphone, if you have the facilities to be able to use a microphone, please do, particularly if you're doing teaching dance content. Generally speaking, sound design is a really important aspect, and often people will judge the quality of a final product based on the quality of its sound design. If you're doing a choreography or a dance video where you're just performing to the camera, I'd recommend keeping a little bit of ambient sound in there so that you can hear footwork and you can hear the sound of the space that you're in. So if you're in a park, maybe there'll be people, maybe there'll be birds, but you want to make sure you have a little bit of that sound. So maybe like 20% of that and 70% of just adding an audio track on the top. This is to allow it to feel more real. If you just have the audio of the song that you're dancing to and none of the ambient sound, it makes it feel very artificial. You want to have a little bit of texture from whatever space you filmed in to make it feel more grounded and more realistic. If you're editing together like a routine choreography where you're cutting between close-ups, medium shots, and long shots, I'd recommend taking one sound file from your takes. So pick one of the masters where you've got it all the way through, take the audio from there, 20% down, put it as a bass track and have that be the underlying audio between all of them, because if you can hear cuts in your final piece, it sounds terrible. So I'm going to be editing some footage today, so I'm going to screen capture some of my editing process to show you that and talk a little bit more. So this video is going to be a little bit longer, so hold on to your butts, we're going to go into it, and I'm going to show you exactly what I've been doing to create this product. So let's quickly get acquainted with our video editing software. So this is iMovie. You might have different software, but they all have the same layout. On the top left, we have where our footage is. This is a place that you can keep all your footage. At the bottom here, we have our timeline. The blue is the visuals, the green is the audio, and in the top right, we have the viewfinder. This will preview footage from either your timeline or from your source footage, but it's a way of looking at what you got. So I've opened up a new file. I'm going to do some editing of some teaching content I have. So I'm just going to import the footage like so. It's a drag and drop dealie. Most of them have drag and drops. If not, there's an import media function. It's normally Control-I, and it pulls up a little window for you to be able to bring footage in. But I've already got my footage, so I don't need to do that. So now I'm going to scrub through my clips. This just means looking through it to see what I have, what I need to cut out. Because I was the person who filmed this, I know what I need to get rid of. I know what's terrible. So what I'm doing here is I'm just pulling it down straight onto the timeline so that I can zoom in and see the footage better. My audio was really quiet there, so I bumped up the volume, and now I'm looking for the ums, the ahs, the so's, all of that nonsense that needs to get cut out. So I can either pull it across like so to cut out something at the beginning, or I can split the clip. So once I know where I want to put the split, I move my cursor to where the viewfinder needs to be, and I can double click to split the clip, Control B in this particular case. All of your various editing softwares will have different ways of cutting it, but it's normally called split, and you just want to do something like that where you can make a hard cut. So I'm zooming in now so I can see the waveform. So I'm actually particularly looking at the audio waveform. So if you look at the bottom of the clip, there's this little blue bar and it has a little audio waveform. This is a much more useful way of figuring out where the ums and ahs are, because you're going to go and it's going to get quiet at the end. And so it's a really nice clear way to see this little lump here is a bad lump, remove that lump. And so I use the audio waveform a lot more to edit out bits and pieces of speech than I do the visuals, because it's a lot easier to see it than it is to see my mouth moving. So you can see here I'm just looking through the footage, I'm looking at all the talky bits, and I can see here in the waveform that there's a lot of silence. So this is probably somewhere where I got a little bit confused. I need to just think for a second, and so I need to get rid of this. So you can see the same thing happen again. I'm listening to the end of that sentence, and I'm trying to cut to a point that makes sense in the audio. So I'm listening to the track now to see where the end of the sentence is and where I can join it to the next bit of talking. And then I can have a look at where the new sentence starts again and make sure that it makes sense. So I'm looking to create a cohesive sentence now. So you can see here I actually have to go back and take away a little bit more. This is because I actually said the same thing twice. So go back and listen to the sentence. You can recreate a new sentence by doing this technique, but it allows you to make sure that what you're saying is cohesive and it makes sense, and you can cut out the parts where you had a brain fart. Once you finish your project and you're happy with it, you need to export it. iMovie calls this share file for some reason, but other places will call it export footage. For specific editing software, you can look up export file, insert name here on Google. So let's say you're using DaVinci or Final Cut Pro. You can look up standard export settings for different software. I'm using kind of like the generic thing that I have here. I want it to compress quickly, but I want it to be still relatively high quality. Then all you have to do is find a home for it to live somewhere on your hard drive. You pick, that's up to you. Some footage will need to render. This just basically means applying all of the edits that you've made to the footage. iMovie does that automatically, but you might need to render your footage before exporting. So I know this video is a little bit longer, editing is a little bit trickier to explain, and I hope you guys enjoyed it or found it useful. Remember, I'm going to do one more video of the series where I'm going to be answering questions from you guys. Leave your comments down below, or Instagram or Facebook. I'm Katie Cobalt everywhere, and I will answer those questions in our final video of the series, which will be next week. I will see you then, and I hope you have a lovely week, and